Welcome to this week's Frequently Asked Questions video. Today I'm going to be exploring how do we find the ultimate truth and how do we discover what's actually real. This is really in response to a number of different questions that have been coming in from different perspectives. One came from a member of the community, Annie, who made reference to the red pill in the movie The Matrix and wanting to find out what is ultimately real. And so I'm excited to explore, how do we get to what is actually real? How do we begin perceiving and experiencing that in our lives? And I want to offer you a new context, a model. It may not be a new context, but I think this is a new model for understanding the stages of consciousness and how those impact how we interact with each stage and how we move through these stages, how they have a relationship with one another. For those of you who are new to the channel here, I invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell when you do so to be notified when a new video is posted or anytime I go live, as I am today. Welcome to everyone who's tuning in live, and of course those that are joining in through the replay. And if this video resonates with you on whatever platform you're viewing it on, I invite you to give it a thumbs up. Okay, let's talk about the stages of consciousness in a new way. Yes, it's a developmental journey without a doubt, but I want to share with you an idea of how we can think about the stages of consciousness and understand what's going on in them. And to do this, I'd like to share a new model, a new drawing. Okay, so I want you to think about each stage of consciousness like a computer. And each of these computers is independent. They have little feet to rest on the shelf. And they have different relationships with each other, these computers. For example, down here in victim consciousness, everything that's running on the hard drive of victim consciousness is oriented towards an experience, an interpretation of being disempowered. And it's not that being disempowered is not real. When you're running this computer, this hard drive here, I hope it's not hard to see. This says victim. When you're running this off of this computer, everything that's going on from this operating system, if you will, is all about disempowered. And it's also about the separate self. This computer is all about controlling consciousness. And this is all about empowerment. Oops. And this is conduit consciousness. And this is all about an experience of the whole self. Now, here's the part that might be a little bit different to think about. When we're running off of the victim consciousness hard drive, what we're encountering are, and I don't really like this metaphor, but it's the best that I've been able to come up with for offering a way of thinking about each stage of consciousness and perceiving it from a different perspective. So when we're in victim consciousness, the viruses that are running on that computer are related to the wounds that are amplifying the story of victim consciousness. So if you want to think of it this way, the viruses are the actual experiences of being victimized, the actual trauma associated with that. And because this dynamic is about the operating system and the hard drive and the computing dynamic here, that those viruses open up certain types of programs or make it more likely that those types of programs are going to run on this operating system. And those types of programs very much relate to, I guess it's hard to see with this view, very much relate to amplifying the experience of being disempowered. And the movement between this computer, which we could say is computer number one, and computer number two, which is about controlling consciousness, is a binary move. That is to say, we're either over here in the experience of victim consciousness, or we're in the experience of controlling consciousness. But we're not having both at the same time. It's either this or it's this. So in this movement, we effectively turn off this computer and turn on this computer. And the movement into that new computer is all about taking responsibility. So it's not, the movement into controlling consciousness is not about resolving the viruses in victim consciousness. It's not about resolving those origin wounds and traumas where you were victimized. And the move into this movement into controlling consciousness, sorry, I'm seeing it. Maybe if I close my eyes, I'll do better here in sharing this with you. In the movement over into controlling consciousness, we simply are taking responsibility for what's going on in our lives. That is to say, we're taking responsibility for how we are interpreting what is unfolding. And instead of seeing ourselves as disempowered, we move into a dynamic of empowered. Now, the viruses in this operating system are all about what can be controlled and what is not yet controlled. And the origin of these viruses, if you will, the origin comes in from victim consciousness. It comes in from this computer. So that is influencing the viruses that show up in controlling consciousness, but there's still no resolving them. All we're doing is in this operating system is we're working through, how can I control everything? It's all about empowerment, all about empowerment. And the only time that we actually begin really, truly resolving or cleaning these viruses up is when both of these computers are shut down and we've made a move. So we turn all of this off and we move via surrender into conduit consciousness, which is to say, we now are perceiving ourselves rather than I am the author of my life and God is my servant. God is the author of my life and I am God's servant. And this operating system is doing two things. First of all, it's opening up an experience of the whole self. And second of all, it begins powering up these earlier operating systems. And I get that the picture's getting a little convoluted. Stick with me here for just a minute so I can make the point and then we'll explore it more without the picture. From the perspective of conduit consciousness, we're turning on. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn off the picture here so I can just do this with my hands. Conduit consciousness is up here and it's turning on, it's enlivening those aspects of the hard drive here of the empowered separate self and of the disempowered separate self. And so in these dynamics, this computer begins searching and looking for opportunities to resolve the viruses that have infected these two computers. But it's a completely different computer. Still, in the process of turning these other computers on, it may become identified with the computer. The operating system may actually begin to shut down up here, and this operating system might take over, or this operating system might take over. Now, you might be thinking, because I'm thinking this right now, this sounds a little bit convoluted. But here's the thing about this. The focus that seems to be enlivened right now on the planet is what is actually real. And what's fascinating is that none of these computer systems that we've talked about so far, victim consciousness, controlling consciousness, and conduit consciousness, these three computing programs, none of them is actually the complete picture of what is actually real. And certainly from the perspective of victim consciousness, maybe I should put it over here, victim consciousness is over here. From that perspective, each of us who are in victim consciousness are in fact disempowered. There are actually bad things that are going on, and trying to figure out what those bad things are to figure out how to protect ourselves and be safe is a valid pursuit. And so the truth from the perspective of this operating system is very, very different than the truth from this operating system. And so the kinds of programs that will begin to run on this operating system relate to the wounds or the traumas of feeling disempowered. And so naturally, this entire operating system is all about trying to figure out where's the bad stuff? How do I get to not be in a bad dynamic? And what rules do I need to follow to make things so that I am safe? That's the entire operating system. And so when we're up here in conduit consciousness and we're cycling on this computer to clean the viruses off, these viruses can be very compelling. That is to say, these wounds and traumas that we have encountered in our lives that leave us feeling disempowered can become phenomenally enlivened. And the programs that we would want to run to try to figure those things out very much relate to good and evil and how do I find safety. Now, from the perspective of this operating system, the red pill for this operating system, what's really real are all the things that are bad and evil and trying to figure out how to create safety. And what's also really real is that this operating system on its own will never, ever deliver an experience of safety. And you can see this in the kinds of things that are enlivened in victim consciousness. And I actually don't have these emails up in front of me, or I would read them to you. Annie wrote in about this and started referring to things that had gone on in the last election and things that were going on around the virus and all this kind of stuff. And what I said to her is, look, let's assume it's all real. It's not even about denying the validity of these perspectives. Some people might, and I think I've referred to them as conspiracy theories. Maybe that is a condescending way of referring to something which is very, very real in the context of this operating system. But my point about this is not to say this is not real. It's to say there's another operating system, there's another computer that is available for us as human beings. And it's an empowered computing system where fundamentally each of us are empowered. We are the author of everything that is unfolding in our lives. And if we turn this computer off and turn this computer on, all of a sudden we see ourselves as empowered. I am creating everything in my reality. If anything is showing up that I don't like, it's up to me to fix it. And then if I get caught up in programs that were running back here in disempowerment, those programs might be very appealing to me because from an empowered standpoint, I only have two options or three options. I am actually empowered. I'm making things as I actually want them to be, or things are bigger than me and I can't control them. Now I'm over here in victim consciousness, that operating system, that hard drive is running, or I don't have the answer and the divine does have the answer, in which case I let go of control and I move to a completely different operating system and hard drive and computing system of conduit consciousness. So one of the other things, and I think Annie mentioned this, and a number of other people have mentioned this to me, not just in the last week, but over the last number of years, the question comes up over and over again. Well, how I want to deal with what's actually real. But here's the thing. All of these operating systems, conduit consciousness, manifestor and controlling consciousness, and victim consciousness, all of these have within them a distortion. That is to say, something that is not actually real, which is to say, the illusion of separation, the illusion that we are separate from ourselves, separate from one another, and separate from the divine or God or whatever you want to say, the universe, source, so on, the nothingness, the emptiness. And so if we are in that dynamic of looking for what is actually real, we will not get caught up. Well, let me say it differently. We will get caught up exactly as much as we need to integrate the viruses, the traumas, the wounds from each of these earlier computing systems so that we can live and experience the dominant dynamic of our lives from conduit consciousness. And then there's an entirely different computing system that opens up. And I'm going to try to draw a picture of it here so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's make it big again. So we've got computer number 1. Oops, I put a plus there. Computer number 1, computer number 2, computer number 3, and now we have computer number 4. This is union. And it's only in union that all of these computers, all of them, this one is turned on. There's the power button. We turn it on. Boop, boop, boop. Turns on. And we turn this one on. We turn this one on. And we turn this one on. But here's the thing. The only way that all of these computers can be on at the same time is if none of them have any of the artifacts of separation. That is to say, if none of them have any viruses running anymore. And so how do we actually clear the viruses off? If I'm trying to use the language from the movie The Matrix a little bit here to try to describe this to you so that perhaps you can see this or begin to experience it from a different perspective. The only hard drive or the only computing system that is actually capable of cleaning viruses off of victim consciousness and controlling consciousness is conduit consciousness. And so if you find yourself in maybe living a life where disempowerment is the dominant dynamic that is going on for you, that is to say, this is the computer that's turned on, the disempowered separate self computer of victim consciousness, the only question that I would invite you to think about in the pursuit of what is actually real is, are you ready to take responsibility for everything that you're experiencing? Are you ready to accept that you are creating this dynamic? It's a big question. And if you're caught up in, I want to try to think of another word here other than conspiracy theory. Let's just call it really compelling programs that resonate deeply in victim consciousness, in this computer system, in this operating system. If you're ready to move to a deeper level of the truth, you don't want to be running those programs. You don't want to be exploring them because those programs only ever generate deeper and deeper experiences of the polarity of victim consciousness, which is this is evil and this is good. And how do we get over here to this experience so that we are safe? That is to say, how do we get to the good so that we're safe? That's it. That's the entirety of victim consciousness. If we distill it down in the most simple way possible, that's my language for what it is. I can say that clearly. And and by the way I'm talking about this may imply or may even say clearly to you, you know what? You have one computer on, then you have this one on, then you have this one on, and you never just go back and have this experience. I think I said that's not the case. And let me say it again. It's never the case. It's so compelling when concerns of safety are enlivened in our lives that we go back and orient and become focused on how do we find safety. These programs all of a sudden start running again and everything else shuts down and this is it. So it's completely understandable. And in that dynamic, whether this has been the dynamic that has dominated in your life or this is the thing that is recently enlivened because there's a program that's really compelling that's running that's saying, if you don't figure this out and figure out the truth of what this really is, you're going to end up over here having this really, really bad experience. That's all real. But there's another in this computer system, that's all real. Or you can say, I am responsible for everything I'm experiencing, not just in here, everything out here. And when I take complete responsibility for that, I turn on this computer and this one turns off. And now the programs running here are all about control. They're all about making it the way I want it to be. And you'll recognize that if you start pretending that you're having control, but you're in a dynamic for I'm laughing because Gary just commented, hey, Bretta, is Union like the mainframe computer or server that everything is connected with? Yes, Gary, it is. Union consciousness is the mainframe. It is the total deal of who we actually are. It's where the truth is. The actual truth, the ultimate experience that the red pill out of the movie The Matrix is talking about delivering for us. But if we come down here and we think, I'm in this empowered dynamic, I am empowered, I'm going to go in and I'm going to now be empowered for other people. I'm going to help empower other people. We're going to be empowered around this dangerous dynamic. Nope. We just turned off the empowered separate self and we turned on the disempowered separate self, because the empowered separate self, this operating system, this computer of controlling consciousness, is just about each of us individually. It's about me for me, you for you, and all of us for ourselves. If we are in a dynamic where we are trying to go rescue someone else or present the ultimate answer for everyone, if you do this, you'll be safe, is the way that sounds, by the way. The ultimate answer for everyone in victim consciousness, do this and be safe. We're actually back operating in victim consciousness. We're playing the drama triangle game. You know, the drama triangle? We've got the victim, we've got the perpetrator, and we've got the rescuer playing one of those roles. And by the way, once you step into the drama triangle, you play all of those roles. Doesn't matter where you are. If you're in leadership, you play all of those roles. Think about many of the leaders who are alive leading their countries. Not many, some in the world right now. They are playing out a dynamic of the drama triangle in the context of their national and international politics. Us and them. That's all victim consciousness. I alone can figure out how to save us. I'm the rescuer. And then there's also, we're good and they're bad. I'm a victim some of the time, or these people are victimizing me. They don't represent me correctly. Sound familiar? Not trying to throw rocks at anyone here. I'm just trying to identify what is going on in victim consciousness and in the drama triangle. This is not a triangle between empowered parties. This is all about playing in late victim consciousness. Right before you turn the computer off, you play the drama triangle game. And how do you get out of the drama triangle game? You say, I'm not part of this anymore. I'm not a perpetrator. I'm not a victim. I'm not a rescuer. I am in charge of everything. boop, this computer turns off, this one turns on. Now I'm empowered. And when we get to the place where this operating system is reaching its limits, one of two things is happening. Either I'm feeling massively disempowered and I go back and become identified in the viruses and the programs that are running in the disempowered dynamic, which happens all the time, by the way. This is not some failure. This is just part of how it goes. Or we get to a point after we go back and vacillate between these two operating systems, we say, wait a second, there must be an answer here. And the answer is beyond me. It is with the divine. I'm holding the divine at bay, thinking I'm in charge of everything. Stop, God. I've got this covered. And over here, where is the divine? The divine's angry at me. That doesn't seem right. Wait a second. I'm having some experiences of some programs that are running from this perspective that seem like, yeah, experiences of God are available. And there's some peace that might be available. But then this operating system takes over and controls. Then I surrender. Then I move up into conduit consciousness. And then basically, here's the deal. We run this computer until all of a sudden we don't even realize it, right? All of a sudden there's a much bigger perceptual view at work. And the ultimate red pill has been ingested. It has been metabolized. And now the whole computing system is turned on. One with everyone, one with that aspect of ourselves and everyone who is in victim consciousness, one without having any viruses within our own dynamic that create an identification with this, yet one with that within ourselves, one with the part that is empowered, yet not thinking we are in charge, understanding there is an empowered aspect of me and everyone who is identified in that dynamic, understanding and recognizing there is a part of me that is an expression through which the divine expresses in the world, and realizing that the divine and I are one, which that language even falls away when the mainframe, when the big computer kicks on, and we are in union consciousness and having an experience of I am. That's the ultimate answer. So how do we do that? And I want to answer this question not from a feeling perspective or a being perspective, which is always how I'm trying to talk about these things. I want to answer it from an understanding, an intellectual perspective, which I resist mightily, but I'm going to take that step with you now. So, and Clint, I see your comment and I'll come to it here in just a minute. Okay. So in the movement, it's little steps, disempowered to empowered, taking responsibility, then letting go of control. Then when these computers are turning on and these hard drives are spinning up, the viruses get cleared off because we allow ourselves to be present with the experience of those viruses without running the programs that get animated by them. We're present with them from the perspective of this operating system, yet present here with the wound, with the virus, the trauma, the controlled trauma or the uncontrolled, that is to say, the victim trauma over here in this operating system. I'm getting so excited thinking about it this way. I'm really hoping that this offers another way of considering the stages of consciousness. So in the perspective, in the being perspective, if you think back about other videos that I've done where I'm talking about the top of the ocean, down a layer, down a deeper layer, that deeper layer is the computer of conduit consciousness. These hard drives are spinning up all the time, but rather than becoming identified with the programs, we're feeling the virus, the trauma, and it is transmuted. And in that process, we clean the hard drive, the operating system of victim consciousness. And with that, we discover something profound that is only available by encountering and experiencing this operating system in this hard drive. It's called compassion. Compassion is all about appreciating someone else may be having a challenge that they don't have an answer for, that you don't have an answer for, that I don't have an answer for. But there's a connection between us. And the connection, once we have cleaned this hard drive, is not, oh, yeah, I feel that way. And let me tell you about these programs let's run. No, it's this. It's, I understand. I have felt this as well. And it's part of my journey as a human being, just as it is for you. Or I also appreciate feeling completely empowered. That is the only answer to disempowerment. Once the viruses are cleaned here. And what is the virus that is up here in conduit consciousness? It's just separation, which melts away on its own. You can't do battle with separation, right? Ultimately, which is what we learn in each of these operating systems. Okay, I want to go to Clint's question. So doing union consciousness well is skillfully running all the computers at the same time and managing which one has the most influence. Clint, I would say it differently than this. I would say doing conduit consciousness well is running the computing systems that are spooling up and managing how those are balanced. In union consciousness, there is nothing to manage. There's nothing to manage. Look at this. Oh, where's my, oh, I've lost, oh, here it is. Okay, here's my pencil. Let me share this again. So let's go over here. There's an operating system and a computer here, 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 and here. Right? Here we have this experience. Here we have this experience. And there is nothing to manage. Management is happening here, or here, or here. There's nothing to manage in union. Union is not about any effort of control. There is nothing to manage. Everything is in balance. And the movement between these, let's say this, conduit consciousness and the overarching union consciousness happens when the viruses, the artifacts of separation, the wounds and traumas are cleared. And here's another thing. It's not that all of a sudden we have an experience of the big computer and that's it. We can have the experience of the big computer and then whoop, drop into conduit, and then all of a sudden become identified and victim. It'll give you whiplash. And I think that's an experience that many, many people are having right now, right? Is this, well, wait a second. I was going along. I felt so great in my life. Everything was in the state of flow. And then all of a sudden, this thing came in from outside and began influencing and affecting my experience of my life. And what do I do with that? Well, if I'm identified in victim consciousness, then I run programs that resonate in victim consciousness. If I'm identified in controlling, I run programs that resonate in control. If I'm identified in conduit, I run the program in conduit consciousness. And by the way, what does that program sound like? The divine is expressing in me, through me, as me. And just as it is in and through and as me, it is in as and through you too. I don't mean to point at you in some aggressive way. I mean, in all of us. It's doing that for all of us. It's not just some of us, it's all of us. It's not just in some people, it's true in everyone. And it's all the time. That's the program of conduit consciousness. Tranya is saying hi. Hi, Tranya. Thanks for checking in. Okay, so I want to wrap up here and just bring us back to the trajectory, the movement. How do we get to what's actually real? It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Right? I'm suggesting, well, there's one computer and then there's a second computer and there's a third computer and there's a fourth computer. And a huge part of the way that our minds think and that we're trained to think as human beings, and this is true all over the world, is, well, if there's a pathway and a better computer, then I need to upgrade right now. And here's the paradox. Upgrading is about doing what you need to do to move from disempowerment to empowerment. It's about identifying with a bigger perspective of who you really are. Are you actually really truly in charge of everything? Well, not from the perspective of union consciousness, except yes, you kind of are, which is a little confusing. So you have to remember it's computer number one, computer number two, computer number three, and then the fourth computer turns itself on. These other movements are really choices: the choice to take responsibility, the choice to let go of control on a sustaining basis, the choice to be present with the wounds and traumas that are animated as we're having this experience much more fully of who we really are in conduit consciousness, and then integrating as we go. So the red pill is about the movement between these stages of consciousness and then taking up residence here in the computer of conduit consciousness and doing this work. Rather than running the program of, oh my gosh, here's how to be safe when I feel disempowered, it's only in my experience with the divine, when the divine is running everything, am I safe, yet I feel disempowered. So I sit from this perspective with this feeling. I let this virus unwind itself and uninstall itself from this computer. The only place to do that is up here. If I'm going to get into a struggle with what's good and evil, I'm just running programs that are resonating down here. And yeah, from the perspective of victim consciousness, it looks like the red pill. It looks like what's actually true until you take responsibility. Then the red pill reveals something totally different. You're in charge of everything. But then you realize, wait a second, I can't create the safety I really need for this thing, or I can't actually affect life the way I want to. Ultimately, not really. I cannot create a deep, fulfilling experience that I'm after here, that my separate self most needs until and wants, until I let go of control and open up to the divine conduit. All right. So grateful that we are connected in this way. Couple things that I want to invite you to do. First of all, I invite you to comment below. I love receiving emails. It's wonderful to have conversations there. I want to suggest there's another layer of vulnerability and authenticity that we all have available to us here. I'm trying to practice it by putting these videos up on a regular basis. I'm now posting 3 times a week, and each one of them I'm trying to do as a live cast. Okay, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So here we are on Monday's live cast for this week, and we're talking about how to get to what is really real, how to uncover what is really real in our lives. And I will answer you either way, but I would love for you to comment below and share what is coming up for you. What is challenging you about this? Let's have a conversation, a public conversation as a community, and realize what I want to support is the process of integration. That's what we're talking about here. And the process of integration ultimately is not about becoming identified in the polarity, but how to work through, how to transmute the polarity so that we can have the experience of the big computer, right? So we can experience who we really are. So please comment below. Second, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, great. You already know how to subscribe. If you're not, there's a link in the description to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And third, if this resonates with you, please give it a thumbs up or like on whatever platform, on Facebook, on YouTube. And I don't know if I'm on Twitter today or not. It threw an error at the beginning of the video, so who knows? In any case, I'm grateful that we are connected in this way. There are a few invitations I want to make to you before we wrap up. First of all, If you'd like to connect on a deeper level, the way to do that is to add your name and email address to my newsletter. And there's a link in the description to do that. If you're on the live stream, the links aren't up yet. And the way to do that is at kenwstone.com/newsletter. Second, if you'd like to have an experience of moving into this computer of conduit consciousness, I refer to that as going deep. We're going to do a deep dive workshop. It's virtual, it's on video. It is paid, but it's a very minor investment to participate in this. It's a drop in the bucket, certainly compared to what you're going to experience. And I think compared to many, many other things. Check it out, though. Deepdiveworkshop.com. If it resonates, if you want to drop in deep, there is an extraordinary group of people from around the world. We gather every other week on Thursdays, and then we do bonus sessions for people who are part of the monthly membership group on Saturdays as well. So I invite you to explore that if it resonates with you. Most of all, I'm so grateful that we're connected in this way. What an honor it is to walk with you. Can't wait until we connect again live for Wednesday's virtual group session and community circle. Bye for now. Peace. Oops. Yep, there's the end.